Many books have been written over the years about what leadership is or what leadership is supposed to mean, whether in the family, in church, in corporations, or even in politics. When I was an undergraduate at the University of Zambia in the 70s, one of the questions that remained unanswered up to the end of my studies was whether leaders are born or they are made. Does history define individual leaders, or do leaders define history? In Robin Sharma's book, which is titled Leadership Wisdom, the Canadian journal, the Edmonton Journal, praises this book as, and I quote, one that sheds light on life's big questions. Leadership indeed calls to attention the big questions of life, because leadership has an impact on the family, leadership has an impact on a corporation, leadership has an impact on the politics of the country and even the future of the country. In this 10th episode of the podcast, I explore the lives of some of the leaders that lived in the last 2 centuries to examine their leadership qualities and what they did for them to qualify to be referred to as leaders. These are men that significantly contributed to the establishment of the nation states, which they later came to lead, to the establishment of stable societies. Let us start with the United States. James Madison was born in 1751. In 1787, at the age of 36, Madison was one of the 55 delegates to the Philadelphia Convention, which formulated the United States Constitution, which today is referred to as a document which has stood the test of time. During that convention, Madison was given a task. He is referred to in the history of the United States as the father of the US Constitution, for the reason that he was requested to draft the first 10 articles in the Constitution, which contain the Bill of Rights. Madison was anti-slavery, but he did not attempt to abolish slavery for fear that if he advocated for that, the southern states would not join the new union, which today we know as the United States of America. But what he believed in was that the Constitution should establish a just society for all. He believed that the Constitution should empower the majorities, but not allow them to act as tyrants on the minorities. He wanted a fair society in which the majorities and the minorities could live in harmony without one group oppressing the other group. Doris Kearns Goodwin has written one of the most comprehensive biographies of Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln, in 1860, attended the Republican Convention. At this convention, Lincoln was pitted against 4 other candidates. In 1861, Lincoln was elected president. What Goodwin is exploring in this biography is Lincoln's distinguished leadership in political judgment and reconciliation. Because of the 3 contenders that contested that election with Lincoln, Lincoln appointed them into his cabinet when he won. One of them was appointed as Secretary of State. The other one was appointed as Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of War at that time, and the third one was appointed as Secretary of the Treasury. These men came from diverse backgrounds. They were indeed a team of rivals, as the title of the book goes. And this is the book in question, which I recommend to everybody that would like to read about leadership to do so. This group of the team of rivals, irrespective of their divergent views and their backgrounds, they went on to converge in a spirit of patriotism to the union which had been established. Because of that teamwork, they managed to save the union from defeat and collapse during the Civil War, which raged from 1861 to 1865 of Lincoln's first term in office. The principles and unity of these men to establish a country that would today be known as the greatest power economically and militarily in the world was a feat of greatness. They put their differences aside. They saw nothing apart from the country that they were to save. In 1857, there was a rebellion in India against the British East India Company. The rebellion led Britain to take over India under direct rule of the imperial power. One of the figures who stood out during the period of Indian struggle for independence was a man called Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru was in the group of colleagues that decided that it is high time the imperial Britain left India to the indigenous Indians. He therefore joined the intensity of the struggle that drove India towards its independence in 1948. During the Constitutional Assembly, which convened from December of 1946 to about November of 1949, Nehru, like Madison, was given a task. His task was to draft the objectives resolution of the Constituent Assembly. First objective resolution that Nehru drafted and proposed to the Constitutional Assembly was that the Assembly was to declare India as an independent state. The Assembly was also to declare that the Constituent Assembly had powers to make India's constitution. That was Nehru's task. And in 1949, the Constitution of India was adopted by the resolution of that assembly. In 1850, Nehru was elected Prime Minister. James Madison became President of the United States in 1808. So both men came to lead their countries. In 1921, the Communist Party of China was born in a small town in China. One of the 13 delegates to attend the establishment of the Communist City of China and its National Congress was a man called Mao Zedong. Mao was a teacher and a librarian born into a peasantry family, and he took part in the Civil War in China, which lasted a period of 20 years. In October of 1949, Mao at the Tiananmen Square declared China a state. It was the end of the Civil War. Mao's support came mainly from the peasantry, and Mao subscribed to Marxism. But there was a contradiction that Mao had to face. And the contradiction was this. According to Marx's economic theory, China was not ready to transition from a semi-feudal society to communism. The gap was too wide. But Mao decided to review that principle. He couldn't abandon the majority of the peasantry who had supported the revolution. The majority of the peasantry who were part of the victory of the establishment of the new China. And Mao decided the peasantry was going to be his political support base. In order to change the face of China and construct a new China, Mao sparked what is known in history as the Cultural Revolution in that country, which ran for 10 years from 1966 to 1976. It was intended to bring about a new way of thinking in China. And Maoism became the theory for the new China. It guided China up to the time of Mao's death in 1976. Mao had left behind an established country which today we know as China. The leadership question is not only limited to America and Asia. Let's look at the leaders in Africa. In 1963, there was a rebellion on the island of Zanzibar. The rebellion was against the Sultan, who was the ruler of an Arab-led government in Zanzibar, which was in the minority. And the rebellion was caused by the building up of tension between the minority Arab elite in Zanzibar and the majority black Africans on the island. After the overthrow of the Sultan in April of 1964, Zanzibar and mainland Tanganyika decided to sign a treaty for a union, the union between the two countries, the island and the mainland of Tanganyika. The first president of that union was a man called Julius Nyerere. Nyerere is credited to be the one with a vision that directed the establishment of that union. And his vision and the political party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, that he led, survived Nyerere beyond his death in October of 1999. The United Republic of Tanzania, as we know it today, was birthed by that 1964 union between Zanzibar and mainland Tanganyika. In Zambia, in 1964, the territory which was known as Northern Rhodesia got its independence from Imperial Britain. And the first president of the country was Kenneth Kaunda. The following year, in 1965, Ian Douglas Smith of the territory known as Southern Rhodesia declared independence against British rule unilaterally. His rule came to be known as the Unilateral Declaration of Independence. And the Smith regime was hostile to its northern neighbor, Zambia, which had just been born a year before. Kaunda was facing two hurdles. One, a hostile neighbor in the south, but also at home, he had a problem of the simmering ethno-linguistic, or what may be called tribal sentiments amongst his colleagues. And Kaunda has to navigate his way using his leadership, vision, and qualities to hold together a newly born nation called Zambia. Kaunda would proceed and justify his establishment of a one-party state in 1973 as the reason for him to manage the tribal sentiments that were about to destroy a new nation state. In 1978, he went on to sign the Choma Declaration with the Harimwanga Nkumbula, who was head of the African National Congress. Again, his intention was to bring about peace to this new nation, to bring the Zambian people together, to ensure that the national cake was accessible to all the 73 ethnic groupings of a country that he came to lead. And the successes of the UNIP government, despite the excesses of that government, have not been matched by any administration after 1991, the year when UNIP lost power to the MMD. Kaunda is still remembered for the vision and for the principles that he pursued, not for himself, but for the country and the sovereignty of Zambia that we see today. So what then should a leader be? The men that I've just discussed came from different backgrounds and stations in life. They had very little in common. They were born at different times. They were born in different societies. Nehru and Lincoln were lawyers. Mao, Nyerere, and Kaunda were teachers, humble men. But here's what they had in common. What they had in common was their selfless vocation, their determination to establish a just society, a stable society, a peaceful society in the countries that they came to lead. Lincoln and Madison contributed to the stability of the United States. Lincoln is revered for his leadership during the Civil War. Mao is considered to be the father of modern China. He gave the power to the peasantry to establish a state. Jawaharlal Nehru led a country which suffered a partition in 1947, which led to the creation of modern Pakistan, a predominantly Muslim country. But Nehru and his colleagues went on to establish one of the most populous democracies that we know in the world today, a successful democracy economically, even militarily. India became a nuclear power at the age of 50, on its 50th anniversary. Nehru and his colleagues navigated themselves out of the claws of imperial Britain and tenaciously fought for the independence of India to establish what we know of India today. Nyerere, with Karume, who was the leader of Zanzibar, established the United Republic of Tanzania. Kaunda held the 73 tribes together. He introduced a policy of tribal balancing and ensured that all positions in the public service were shared equitably amongst the 73 ethnic groupings. He did this against meritocracy. He's been criticized, and he was criticized even at the time why he had to appoint some people that were by far of less education at the expense of the educated ones. His argument was that he needed to unite everybody, and everybody needed to feel that they have a share in the national cake. The death of Kaunda has seen a surge in the tribal sentiments which Kaunda thwarted in 1964. It has seen the emergence of hate speech predicated on ethnicity. So what does this mean for Africa? Well, with the death of leaders like Kaunda, Nyerere, Lumumba, Nkrumah, and many others of this composite generation, we have seen the rise of a new crop of leadership in Africa, which is moving away from the principles of unity and cohesion in our African States. We have seen politicians across Africa that want to thrive on dividing their countries in order to remain in power. We have seen leaders that are nepotistic, that thrive on tribal tensions to maintain power. What Africa needs now is a generation of leaders that is going to win itself from the breast of the capitalist mother. Let me also say one thing that Nyerere did to unite Tanzania. Nyerere realized that the British had thrived on a policy of divide and rule. And in this policy, they used tribal traditional leaders because it was easy for them to use the chiefs, to divide the chiefs in order to perpetuate British rule. When Nyerere came to this realization after the establishment of the union between mainland Tanganyika and Zanzibar, he took a move and abolished all traditional chieftainship structures in Tanzania. There are no chiefs in Tanzania today. And the intention of Nyerere was to establish a country which had only one power center, and that center of power must be none other than the state. One of the problems that African countries today are facing is the presence of too many centers of power in countries. You don't even know who is in charge. You don't even know who is supposed to be in charge. Nyerere dealt with that very, very well, and hence the stability that we see in Tanzania today. In 1989, after the wind of change, Chama cha Mapinduzi could not lose an election. Despite the 1989 wind of change, Chama cha Mapinduzi has not lost the election because the party is founded on the peasantry, the common man of Tanzania, but above all, because the state is the only center of power. And therefore, there's a lot that other countries can learn from Julius, Kambarage, Nyerere, famously known as Mwalimu Nyerere, a man that I met on a couple of occasions, and he remains my icon in my reading of political history. The man was very clear in thought and deed, but Kaunda measured well too. I therefore end with my quote, another one of my quotes, that a good leader is not one who leads well, but one who teaches others to lead better than him. A good leader is not one who leads well, but one who teaches others to lead better than him. As part of this series of the podcasts, we are launching a coffee mug which carries the logo of the podcast. If you would like to contribute to this podcast series financially, all that you do is buy one of these mugs, or you can buy two, one for yourself and one for your wife, or if you're a wife, one for your husband. Then you'll be making a contribution toward the sponsorship of this program or this series. If you like this video, please follow me on the Facebook page. You can also follow me on my YouTube channel. Thank you.